So what a great way to go into that venue.
Oh yes.
On
yes.
Jazz Fest Day, be exposed to the music and be around adult professional arts and educators. And then just by virtue of his name, Big Dave's Family Barbecue.
Yeah, Big Dave's Family Barbecue.
You can throw down some South Carolina barbecue and
yes.
really enjoy the food. So that has the family feel.
Right.
Howell's Deli and Cafe has been in Goshen forever and ever, and generations. So that has the family feel.
That's real.
And then for other folks, which I think is really interesting, you know, let's face it, there are some venues that younger people will not be going to.
That's right.
But
yeah.
New Street Tavern and Marie Mulaney's Pub is a place for the adults maybe want to gather together and listen to some great jazz and have an adult beverage and enjoy it as well. Toward that end, Chris, I've heard you speak so often. We've been asked so many times, well, why jazz? Why is it jazz? Why isn't it music and arts? Why isn't it rock and roll? All these different things. And there is a specific reason. So being that jazz is America's music, we'll let Chris speak to that.
Well, you know, jazz is a music, a lot of folks across the country and probably even across the world, you know, has looked at jazz as always being a jazz enthusiast, this is. Look at jazz as being an American classical musical art form, and it is. It's basically jazz is world music, is what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
However, it is the American classical musical art form. And there's one thing that I had noticed during the time I've lived up here. There's not a lot of jazz in the area. And this Orange County or this Mid-Hudson Valley is a reflection of the United States of America. You know, you look at towns like Newburgh, which per capita is equal to New York City, you know, in terms of its whole demographic, geographical, and psychographical prowess. You look at large cities and what we have up here. You know, right now we have Bethel Woods, and you know they're looking to bring more jazz in the area. Mm-hmm. Jazz being what it is not black nor white. It has nothing to do with the melanin content of the individual, because we're all Americans. And jazz happens to depict the very essence of all of us as Americans. You look at, and even in terms of even our culture, you know, because of the freedom of expression, sure. Because of its in the moment improvisations, you know, and even for and what is improvisation? But even what we're doing right now, mm-hmm. you know, it's like we're not actually being scripted. We're actually talking real to you about what it is that's part of your culture, that is your culture. And within that, you know, you have folks like Dizzy Gillespie, who has brought the music over from Cuba, and now you intermix that. Now we have this Latin jazz situation, and you have a lot of the Latino, Hispanic contingent mm-hmm. in the area, especially here in the Goshen area. So, you know, there are times that actually up until all the way every year, I've always had a somewhat of a Latin type of group or ensemble, right. You know, and it was always about a Latin jazz situation. So, you know, to be able to address, you know, everyone's taste within the jazz format.
That is the language.
That is the language.
And exactly. I think that it's important to note, I believe, when you work in the world of arts, as Chris and I do, and I'm sure in the businesses that you're working at home, everything always comes back to the mission statement.
Everything.
Is what you're doing in line with the mission that you're charged with. And the reason why it makes perfect sense for the Goshen Public Library to be so heavily involved with this, in the mission statement of the Goshen Public Library are the words to explore, support, and encourage the open exchange of ideas through multicultural experiences.
Exactly.
And nothing really speaks better to that than the language of the arts. It's a big reason why we do our outdoor Shakespeare. It's a reason why we do our big band concert every year.
And of course, Great American Weekend every year. You know, it's like, you know, the Great American Weekend is all type of festivities that reflects the American way of life.
The American experience,
you know,
sure.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, it's another beautiful thing to complement what you just said in terms of jazz and the library itself. For what jazz presents to our public, it also, the library does the same thing. It gives a historic content. You know, you go there, you find out, it's all about the research and the finding out, you know, where you're from, where you're going. In order to know where you're going, you have to know where you're coming from.
Sure.
You know, so in jazz, it's like the jazz at one time was the commercial music. I mean, so now it's not going to become, so, you know, there are aspects of it that's going to be archival music, you know. However, the evolution of jazz is very important to start recognizing. Because, you know, the masters, which were Charlie Parker, John Coltrane, Charles Mingus, Oscar Pettiford, these are a lot of my heroes. Was Billie Holiday, Sarah Vaughan. You look at these innovators of the American classical musical art form, and do they look for us at this particular point while they're resting in their peace to continue doing it the same way they did it? No, they look for the continued evolution of it.
The movement of it.
Yeah, the movement of it. I went and saw Gary Bartz in Harlem during the Charlie Parker Festival of last week. And he had a few young rappers singing with him on stage with him while they were doing these grooving jazz riffs, which is like the music that they were playing is the evolution of it, but they were still paying homage to Charlie Parker.
Right.
And these rappers who didn't know anything about Charlie Parker have learned something, and now they're writing about that.
Yes.
You know? So now that whole movement is starting to change now.
It's so interesting when things like that happen. It wasn't very long ago, maybe 2 years ago, we just celebrated, this past year, we had a huge celebration for Pete Seeger. On his big 90th birthday.
Not 93rd birthday or something. No,
And
90th. You're right.
90th.
I just spoke to Pete recently, actually.
And it wasn't that very long ago that Bruce Springsteen decided to do the Pete Seeger, the Seeger Sessions, which was a tribute album.
Right.
So he does a lot of Pete Seeger's music. And what he does, as you're talking about it, he doesn't use the E Street Band. He gets musicians from all over the place. And the live album was actually cut in Dublin.
Interesting.
What's really cool about it is there was not one electric instrument.
Wow.
It was all natural keyboards and horns and drums and guitar.
Yes.
The only things that had power were the microphones. And he did the same thing you're talking about. He took what Seeger had created and written and brought to the forefront, and Bruce kind of put his own twist on it.
Mm-hmm.
Where younger audience members who might know who Bruce Springsteen is, not really know about Pete Seeger and the movements and what that man went through and all of those different causes he was a part of. But you hear a hero of yours, for some, Springsteen, singing this new music, and now that door is open, and Chris Farlacus, who will be joining us for the breakfast discussion,
And I'm really looking forward to it.
said that after Springsteen did that, people were trying to get their hands on old Pete Seeger albums to see what was going on. There is no cover charge for any of the venues.
And it never has been. During the whole time we've done this jazz festival, there was never a cover charge.
Free and accessible.
It was free, always free and accessible. You want to give a donation, of course, is always well appreciated. And it would be written out to the Goshen Library and then their cultural program of the Goshen Willie the Lion Smith Jazz Festival.
Yeah.
But it's always been free to the public.
Open and accessible. And
Yes.
and then what we trust will happen when you get inside of each of the venues, you're going to smell the barbecue, you're going to want some.
There's no doubt, because they're going to all have the doors open.
Yes.
I will tell you that
yes.
right now.
You're going to smell the food coming from Howell's, and you're going to, all the other places, 170's got great food, and the party stops at New Street and Mulaney's Pubs. Historically, what has happened is people have so much fun, and the spirit is so palpable that after the set is over, generally the hat gets passed, and for a few extra coins, the musicians will play for an extended period of time.
Yes, exactly.
So we'll give you a couple bits of information again now. It's September 12th. That's Saturday, September 12th, 2009. The breakfast starts at 10:30 in the morning. To register for that, please call 845-615-1242. The jazz events of the day, the venues start at 12 noon, and they go through until 6 o'clock at night, which means that you can literally hear music from noon till about 8 p.m. when the last venue, 170 West Main, will be done serving their dinner.
Actually, they're going to 9.
Until 9 o'clock.
Yes, from
Until
6
9
to
o'clock.
9. And